Hey all, welcome to Share Trek. This is Raj here. Friends, today we're going to talk about a very important organization and a very important campaign that they have. The organization is the PAN Foundation, which is a US-based non-profit organization dedicated to assisting underinsured patients with high out-of-pocket costs of their medical treatments, including prescription medications. The PAN Foundation has a sharp focus on reducing financial barriers to care and work to improve access to essential health services for individuals with chronic, life-threatening, or rare diseases. The foundation provides financial assistance programs for various medical conditions, offering grants to help patients cover co-pays, health insurance premium, and travel expenses for treatment. Additionally, PAN advocates for health equality and policy changes that support underinsured patients and sponsor research on patient access to care. They look at the healthcare aspect from a broad lens through the entire life cycle of therapies and range of patients from all walks of life. The PAN Foundation, in collaboration with the Harris Poll, has revealed new data highlighting the significant interest and positive attitudes towards clinical trials among people of color and LGBTQIA+ individuals. Despite historically low participation rates, this is a surprising revelation. In response to the need for greater diversity and guided by the key findings of the 2024 survey, the PAN Foundation has launched the Open Doors to Clinical Trials Education Initiative, a multi-year movement empowering people with comprehensive tools and resources to navigate the complexities of clinical trials, including those who have felt left out or overlooked. The program has several differentiating components, including one-on-one support, an easy-to-navigate trial finder, and person-centric content. Today, we have the opportunity to talk to Amy Niles to understand this initiative. Amy is the Vice President of External Relations as a key leader at the PAN Foundation and oversees public education, advocacy, and partnerships to advance PAN's mission. Amy is known for her efforts to improve health equality and amplify patient voices, emphasizing the importance of financial assistance programs in ensuring treatment adherence and health outcomes. She also participates in initiatives addressing the underrepresentation of marginalized communities in clinical trials. Welcome, Amy. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Amy, our audience is consisting of a lot of people from across the globe, especially the ones who are suffering from HIV. And they are anxiously waiting for various clinical trials to complete and some kind of functional cures to come across. And we have a representation of the cross-section of humanity in our subscriber base. So they would be interested in learning more about this Open Door initiative. So for a layperson, can you please explain what a clinical trial is? Let's start from there.
Great place to start. Really, a clinical trial is a research study that tests new treatments like medications or perhaps a device or a procedure. And these tests are conducted on people to determine if they're safe and if they're effective. It's really how medical advances move from what we would say from the lab to real life healthcare. And it's voluntary. People volunteer to participate in clinical trials, and generally speaking, they do so for a number of reasons. One, because they want to be part of this effort to advance medical research. They want to learn more about how a treatment or a device might work. If someone participates in clinical trials, they often get more visits with their healthcare provider because that healthcare provider needs to monitor their health as they participate in the clinical trial. And it's an opportunity to learn about their disease and really play an active role in their treatment. So we're excited about the opportunity to really educate more people about clinical trials.
And having set the ground by saying what clinical trial is, let's move on to the next topic, which is who are the people less represented in the clinical trials these days and why?
Yeah, that is a great question. And generally speaking, underrepresented groups are several. Can include people of color, it includes women, it includes people who are part of the LGBTQIA community, even older adults. And it's interesting because really the key reason that we have found why people really across all of these groups are not participating in clinical trials is because they're not invited to the table to have this conversation. Their healthcare providers are not talking to them about clinical trials as a treatment option. And the individuals themselves may not know enough about clinical trials to ask the right questions. So we often think that, there's a significant amount of mistrust in the healthcare system that exists. We're not, we've come a long way, but that mistrust still exists. But our national poll of individuals really found that despite thinking that mistrust was going to rise to the number one issue, it was really the lack of communication between that patient and healthcare provider across all the groups.
Right. So this is a very good example of where a common narrative has taken ground and everybody picks up that narrative and that keeps being bandied around. But it's a good thing that you did a survey which gave you this insight that it's just a narrative and the narrative is obsolete and the ground
Well,
reality is different. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't want to negate the fact that there is still mistrust, and probably rightly so, because there have been some egregious practices
Yes.
over decades. And, on our digital platform, which I know we'll talk about, we address those practices head on because we don't want to ignore them, right? We have to learn from the past and move forward, but really the focus moving forward is ensuring that that conversation exists.
So having said that, why do we need diversity in clinical trials? Can we just focus on that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, diversity in clinical trials means that we include people from all communities in our trials because we know treatments don't work the same for everyone. So we can't, if we have just one group, we can't make the assumption that the treatments are safe and effective for everybody. So it's really important that we invite more people from underrepresented communities to participate in clinical trials so that we can better analyze the results by community, ensure safety, and ensure efficacy. And we know we have a long road ahead of us because very few people of color, very few people in the LGBTQIA community, et cetera, are participating today in clinical trials.
So, who are the people that can participate in a clinical trial? Does the requirement vary?
The eligibility requirements do vary by clinical trial. It's based on factors relating to gender or age or medical history, certainly diagnosis and health status. So there's no one set of criteria that applies to all. Each clinical trial has its own eligibility criteria.
And if that's the case, what is the commitment needed from people who volunteer to participate in a clinical trial, assuming that they are selected?
Yeah, and that's going to vary as well by clinical trials, but it's going to include things like the commitment for regular visits, excuse me, with their healthcare provider to monitor their progress in the clinical trial. It's going to require just adhering to the protocols of each clinical trial, completing questionnaires, and maybe undergoing certain tests or procedures. So it's really important that if someone is considering participation in a clinical trial, that they understand
Yeah.
what these commitments are because they may or may not be able to adhere to those requirements.
Yeah, and the way I've been looking at it is that these companies which are coming up with therapies, which are doing the clinical trial, they are putting a lot of money into it, and at the end of it, they have to provide to FDA clear records of various points of time when the readings were taken and the adherence to the protocol by the participants of the clinical trial. So it's a big deal. One has to think carefully and adhere to those
Yes,
guidelines if they participate. Now,
yes.
having established all of this, let's go to the juicy part of today's interview. Please tell us about the PAN Foundation and its mission. What does PAN do specifically for people interested in participating in clinical trials?
So, thank you for asking. I'll start with our mission. The PAN Foundation is a national charitable foundation healthcare advocacy organization. We are celebrating our 20th year anniversary this year. Our mission is to accelerate access to affordable and equitable healthcare, and we do that in three ways. The first way is, as you alluded to a few moments ago, providing financial assistance to people who are underinsured to help them start and stay on treatment. And we do this through nearly 80 different programs that support people who are living with cancer, chronic diseases, and rare diseases. And when we're able to give out a grant to someone living with cancer, for example, that means that they can afford their out-of-pocket costs for their medications for a 12-month period. And that is important because we want people to not have to focus on paying for their treatment, but they should be focused on getting better and focused on their health. So we're humbled to do that work. Over the 20 years, we've helped more than 1.2 million people across this country with $4.5 billion in financial assistance. And yet we know that we're just really tapping the surface of people who need our help. So that's what we call our first pillar at the PAN Foundation. Secondly, we advocate for policy solutions that will improve and enhance access to care. There's lots of barriers when it comes to accessing care that individuals need. So for many years, we've advocated for those legislative and regulatory solutions that will improve access to care. One of those issues being ensuring diversity in clinical trials. And finally, we have long educated patients and healthcare providers about very complex issues in our healthcare system. As you all know, our healthcare system is wonderful, but it's complex and it has its issues. And so we are here to try to simplify as best as possible really complex issues, one of them being clinical trials. And so we launched just a few months ago our Opening Doors to Clinical Trials initiative because we saw through the national polling that we did this gap in knowledge around clinical trials, this gap in communicating with healthcare providers. So we knew we needed, accelerating access to treatment isn't just about affording your out-of-pocket costs, but how do we advance science? And through our clinical trials initiatives, we hope to play an important part in doing so. So I like to describe our Opening Doors to Clinical Trials initiative in three components, three ways. The first is we've created a very robust digital platform where individuals can come and simply learn about clinical trials, basic information about clinical trials, terminology, what to expect, different phases of clinical trials. They can also learn about, we talked earlier about, some of the egregious practices that have happened in the past. They can learn more about them. We're not hiding from any of that, but again, we're here to move forward. So lots of information that can empower an individual to improve their health literacy and empower them to know maybe what questions to ask their healthcare provider or how to start a conversation with their healthcare provider. So that's the first piece. The second piece, which is also really important, is what we call our trial finder. So let's say someone has decided, yes, clinical trials is something I want to pursue. How would I even go about finding a trial that might be good for me based on my diagnosis? Well, we know clinicaltrials.gov exists. It is probably the most comprehensive database, but it's very, very hard for someone to navigate and understand. And so we've taken that information and put it into a more patient-friendly language, if you will, so that it's much easier for them to find a trial based on factors that are important to them, such as how far they may want to travel to get to a clinical trial. And then finally, the third component, which we're very excited about, which we know is a differentiator in something, a service that is really needed, is what we call our companion access navigators. And these are live people in our call center. They're providing personalized support to individuals. So if someone has a question about a clinical trial, how to find one, how to enroll. I can't get to a clinical trial. What do? I need transportation. We have people who can answer those questions and can sort of hold their hand and help them find the support they need to explore a clinical trial. So we are excited about this initiative. We know it's desperately needed, and we hope by doing so, we can do our part to educate more people, especially in underrepresented communities, about clinical trials.
That was going to be my next question about the companion access navigation service, but you have already covered that. And in that case, what I would like to ask is, why are this initiative and services valuable to patients from the LGBTQ and minority groups? What distinct hurdles do they face? And how, because you explained how these things help. If we look at it from the other side in terms of hurdles that people face, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I think these groups face unique challenges, which is why the information and the program is so important. One is the medical mistrust that has existed in the healthcare system, primarily due to racism. So trying to, as I said earlier, move forward, not ignore the medical mistrust, but show to these communities that we've come a long way and these trials are safe. They adhere to rigorous regulation and guidelines. They're safe and effective. These communities have also been challenged to a degree with lack of outreach by their healthcare providers, right? They're not being asked to participate, or information about clinical trials isn't even shared with them by their healthcare providers. And we know, and we've done some national polling about this as well, we know that some of these groups often have challenges creating effective partnerships with their healthcare providers. And then, finally, there's simply a lack of resources that are culturally relevant that are available to these communities. So through the Opening Doors to Clinical Trials initiative, we hope to address those challenges head on.
Yeah, so it from a United States perspective, I think PAN Foundation is addressing all the points, including the various ethnic groups and the diverse population that we have. Now, I'll just share a little bit from what I hear from my global audience, especially audience from places like Indonesia, India, Africa, Nepal, those kind of places who watch our channel. Their lament is basically that there is no clinical trial happening for HIV in their area. And they see a lot of things happening in Europe and in the United States, and there is no way for them to participate. So in a way, I think what PAN Foundation is doing is indirectly addressing a little bit of that by making sure that you have the diversity included in the clinical trials here in the United States. And that could be a really good first step and a lot of hope for the international audiences.
Exactly.
So I wish the very best for this initiative. But one more question I have, which I think some people have asked me before in the channel, is how many clinical trials can a person participate in simultaneously?
Yeah, it's usually only one clinical trial, and that is really because it takes a lot for the patient to participate, and we want to make sure that their participation in that clinical trial is safe and effective.
Yeah, and also I guess if they have to follow the rigors which are suggested by the clinical trial, the do's and don'ts, then they may not be allowed to have other supplements and other medicine and other things while they are in the
Exactly.
clinical trial. So it could kind of mess that up. Yeah, I thought I should ask this question because if I didn't ask that, I'll have it in the comment section from various people. Raj, why didn't you ask that question? Okay. So having said that, I feel that the amount of money that PAN Foundation has spent over the years, it's amazing. And generating this kind of money and doing a voluntary service and providing so much of support to people, especially, for example, cancer survivors, right? There was a time when if anybody got cancer in a family, it was the financial ruin of the family because everybody has got to focus on them, put all the money, sell everything. And then the patient is more worried about what will happen if they survive because they won't have any money. So what you're doing seems to be absolutely amazing. That brings us to, at least that brings me to think about how you get your fundings. Is there something we can do in this channel? Is there a link or something I can put in the description where people can go and contribute to the initiative, any of the initiative, or is there a web page that you would like them to check out?
Yes, and thank you for asking that. We over the years we have provided significant funding to many, many people. We're humbled to do this work. I always say, I wish we didn't have to do this work. I wish our healthcare system was such that we didn't have to provide a grant so that they can afford their out-of-pocket costs. But our healthcare system is what it is, and we will continue to do this work because it will be needed. So we do have opportunities for people and foundations and companies to provide support that can be found at panfoundation.org. We're very, very grateful to our long list of generous donors who make this work possible.
That's amazing. That was a very good summary of everything that you do, and I think our audience must have got a good insight about this. I have one more question before you go. Is there any way for organizations across the globe to partner with you and get best practices from you or guidance or support from you in order that they could do something similar in their area of operations?
That's a wonderful question. We really look forward to forging partnerships with organizations because while this work, is at the Pan Foundation, all of us want to advance medical science. So I know clinical trials is an issue that's so important to so many patient groups and provider groups. Of course, at PAN, we work mostly with our partners, our patient groups and provider groups in the United States. But I think, anyone across the globe could monitor our work at Pan Foundation and visit our website for clinical trials, which is clinicaltrials.panfoundation.org, so they can see the good work that we're doing and hopefully will support them in their own countries.
Thank you so much. And I think this was a very enlightening interview. And I hope that we could get together again and monitor the progress of this initiative and give some more information to our audience. And I look forward to see you again. And on behalf of myself and the channel, I'd like to thank you very much and wish the very best for PAN Foundation.
Thank you so much for having us and giving me the opportunity to talk about this initiative. Take care.
Thanks.